Hello everybody, found this really interesting video. Um I do not have a lot of thoughts about it. Obviously there is some sort of choice to it, and the person or the book that he has read, Ali has read, the author of that book is a really famous guy who is very analytical and mathematical in his approach. I think he lost his son, and he had tremendous amount of grief, and the way he dealt with it, and the way he explains it. And I think he was head of Google in some country, and he has since then made his mission to spread this idea about making happiness a choice, understanding, etc. And initially when I heard about it, obviously you get attracted to these ideas because you can have that peace of mind, etc. But then as you live on, you understand that you forget about it. You are still bothered by things, and then it's nice to revisit these things again. What do I think about it? I don't know. Let me look at the video and I will come to know my thoughts exactly. I haven't thought much about it. Let me start recording, and here we go.
Happiness is mixed up in our modern world with so many weapons of mass distraction, as I call them. Joy, pleasure, fun, entertainment, elation, excitement. But that's not happiness.
Dear Diary, today I got an A after studying for 2 hours. Seems like everyone else studied for...
Not happiness. That's not genuine happiness. My son died because of a medical error. They made a mistake in a very simple, 5 mistakes in a very simple surgical operation. Before he went into the operating room, I promise you, the highest point of my life. And then, 4 hours later, Ali's gone. My new baseline of happiness in life has gone from here to here. And you can make a choice to stay here, or you can make a choice to make it slightly better. And that incremental bit is within the hands of every one of us.
I recently sat down with best-selling author and happiness expert Mo Gawdat, and we talked a lot about how we can potentially live happier lives. Mo tragically lost his son, whose name was Ali, in 2014, and since then he's made it his mission to try and understand and research around how happiness works, and to try and make 1 billion.
This is the whole selling point of all these motivational stuff, the self-improvement stuff, all these new guys who are coming up talking about this thing, authors like Mo Gawdat or Andrew Tate or Sandeep Maheshwari. There are so many popular people, and not just these are specific people, but there are so many of them talking about this thing. The fact that, so there are two aspects, right? One is the fact that you have a choice and you can actually affect. That gives you this tremendous amount of hope for the future, that okay, I can actually do it. And then when you are tired of this, there is this another section of people who talk about nothing is in your control, you really can't do much, you can just be yourself and see how it goes. So when you are very tired of the effort of choosing happiness or whatever, you listen to the other set of guys or other school of thought which talks about letting things flow, just being yourself and letting things take care of themselves, etc. And we just keep on switching between these 2 points. Firstly, we try to be in control and we try to choose. Then when we get tired, we come to the other side where we let things flow. And then when it starts flowing in all the different directions and it's just out of hand, you go back to making choices. And it's just strange, right? You keep on alternating between 2 positions.
People happier. And this struggle to find happiness in our day-to-day is something that I've struggled with a lot. We inevitably end up chasing things like money and fame and status and success and prestige, kind of implicitly thinking that those things are going to make us happier. But as everyone says, eventually you realize that actually that's not necessarily, it's not really the path to true happiness and fulfillment. In this video, we're going to be exploring some of the different ways that we can actually become happier using evidence from science and from Mo's experience and from psychology. And we're going to talk about, firstly, the idea that happiness is a choice. Secondly, we're going to talk about why that's a particularly difficult idea for a lot of us to accept.
First of all, the fact that he said that all these things, once you get money, fame, prestige, etc., once you get them, they don't make you truly happy. But you go ahead and ask anyone who is struggling to make money or who is feeling not loved or not seen, that's the only thing that they would want. So and even this person who is talking, I'm sure at one point in time he was not famous, he didn't have all this money, and I'm sure that time the driving factor was money and all this. So I think there is a very beautiful quote that says that become a philosopher only after you become rich, and that is a great way to say things, and obviously as soon as that's the beauty about these philosophical things, right? As soon as you summarize and pinpoint to a particular thing, you can always see contradictions, and that is where we have to be careful.
And then finally, we're going to talk about 5 practical ways that we can apply right now to tangibly increase our own happiness levels. Let's get into it. Now, when I first heard this idea that happiness is a choice, part of me was like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But another part of me was like, it feels a bit wrong to say that happiness is a choice, because what about people who've had child abuse? What about people in poverty? What about people whose life circumstances means that they
Exactly. Such a nice train of thought and explanation.
can't possibly be happy? What's going on there? And I posed this question to Mo.
Absolute happiness is not a choice. Nobody is ever always happy. Of course, if you have chronic pain, if you have been subjected to abuse, if you've lost someone that you love, it's not the same ease of finding happiness that then, like, if you wanted to buy a sandwich and your place was closed, your favorite, or they didn't have your favorite sandwich. Some of us feel unhappy about that, and it's absolutely a choice not to, right? It's not comparable to I've been abused. The question is, in relative terms, losing my child could make me miserable, and nobody would blame me for that. And you can make a choice to stay here, or you can make a choice to make it slightly better, and slightly better, and slightly better. Yeah, I may never return back to that high point. I may never return back to a place of absolute happiness, of remembering my son and not missing him. But I have the choice to make that incremental bit. And that
hats off to Gawdat for explaining such a difficult thing, and using such a bad experience, such a bad thing that can happen in one's life, and using that as a fuel to make people understand what they can and cannot do. Amazing. Hats off to him.
incremental bit is within the hands of every one of us.
Many of us don't like to accept the idea that happiness is a choice. And there's sort of 2 main reasons, if we look at the psychology, literature, and research around this, 2 main reasons why we don't like this idea. The first one is the idea of the negativity bias. The way our brains have evolved over time, it's to be very aware of any threat to our happiness or to our survival or to our status in the group. And so when life is going swimmingly, the brain is like, all right, cool, I'm going to ignore all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to be constantly vigilant for any kind of threat to my potential safety. But what that means is that we have this bias towards negativity, and we're way more likely to pay attention to negative events than to positive ones, because obviously that was useful for our survival. And that means that we're way more prone to thinking that, like, oh, negative external events mean that I can't possibly be happy, therefore happiness is not a choice, it's outside of my control.
Most of us live our entire life on solid ground. Most of us never ever see an earthquake, right? Ever, unless it's in the news. The baseline of life is okay.
Yeah.
And then the negatives just happen. There are dips out of okay and then back to the baseline.
And the second reason why we struggle to accept this idea is the idea of locuses of control. Now, this is a thing within the world of psychology where some people...
There's the thing about understanding the mind, right? People say that understand it and it's easy, etc., etc. And it's so difficult. This particular thing, it's a slippery slope. The more you debate, the more you think about it, you keep on going down the rabbit hole, and it seems never ending. And that is why you have all these people who feel fatigued because of thought. I would say the better thing to do is to divert it. I think that's where I have found the maximum results, that you divert it to something good, something that you enjoy, maybe sports, etc., etc. And what do you really mean by dealing with something? It's not that you have any option with it. So let's say if there is grief of loss, it's not that you choose to deal with it, you suppress, etc. You have to deal with it. Like, there is no other choice. Even if you drink a lot and you try to forget it, you can't do that. You have to deal with it. And even if you sit down and deal with it, there is going to be something bad that will happen. It's a strange thing advising someone else. And as I said, hats off to these people in trying to advise someone else. Very difficult.
Have an internal locus of control, and other people tend to have an external locus of control. And usually what that means is if you have an external locus of control, you sort of feel like your life is ruled by the external world. Like, external circumstances dictate how happy you are personally and what you're able to do. And to an extent, that's true for everyone. But then there are some people that have more of an internal locus of control, where they feel like they are in control of their own destiny and in control of decisions that can profoundly influence the impact of their lives. And generally it's the people that have been raised with this idea of an external locus of control who tend to think, oh my God, happiness can't possibly be a choice because the government, because of this, because recession, because of all these other different external circumstances. Let's now talk about 5 practical ways to become happier.
Now again, there is this huge emphasis on being raised properly. But what does it really mean? I mean, you know, there is that very famous story about an alcoholic father having 2 sons, and one chose to become an alcoholic because he thought that that was the way of life, and the other one said that no, my father suffered, so I'm not going to suffer and I'm not going to be an alcoholic. Is it really something in you? Is it something nature versus nurture, right? Is it something within you or something that you are taught and raised? To an extent, obviously, you can be taught, but obviously there is some truth to it, that the habits that you have in your early life, they stay with you. But then as you grow older, you have more experience of the world, you have more experience of living with yourself, knowing yourself, so you can go and affect those aspects as well. Very strange thing, all these things. 5 practical ways.
Here. And the first one is understanding the happiness equation. Now, this is from Mo's first book called Solve for Happy, which is really good. I listened to an Audible.
There is an equation for happiness. Can you imagine the level of thought here? Something as intangible as happiness has an equation, a mathematical equation.
Absolutely sick. But essentially the idea there is that happiness equals reality minus expectations. Now, based on this equation, we can see that there's not a lot we can do to influence reality, which is often the thing that we're trying to do. But if we want to become happier, we can lower our expectations. And the lower our expectations are, the more likely we are to be surprised by events and therefore be happier as a result of them. But one of the things we talked about in the interview was like, does this mean that we should all just become super pessimistic? Does this mean that, hey, if you want to be happier, you should just lower your expectations to the floor, because then everything's going to surprise you and then everything's hunky-dory and life is all good?
If your target in life is to be happy,
Yeah.
okay, honestly, then yeah, lower expectations will make you happier. I know many friends in my life that decided that they've had enough of fast-paced lives. They went and lived in the Dominican Republic, and the only thing that would make them unhappy on a day is that there is not enough wind to kite surf. Their expectations are very low. They don't expect a Ferrari. They don't expect to be able to live in a big city. They don't want to go to museums. Their expectations are low. So if your target is happiness, yeah, that's the way to go. Okay. If your target is success and impact on life, however, you need to go the opposite way.
Okay.
And the opposite way is I need ambition. So you know, when I wrote Solve for Happy at the beginning, I wrote it with the mission of 10 million happy.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And then 10 million happy happened very quickly, and my team got together and said, maybe we should set a bigger target. So we didn't set 11, we didn't set 100 million, we set 1 billion happy. 1 billion happy is a crazy target to have. How many people in the world have reached 1 billion people, right? But it's a nice, ambitious.
How do you even measure that a person is happy? Strange thing, right? You ask me, maybe in the morning if you ask me, I would have been like, yeah, I'm very happy. Some time back I would have been not so much. And yet you have to go through your day and do the things that you have to do. And that's what's great about life, right? You look at nature, does what it has to do. The sun will rise and will set. Clouds there, rain there, doesn't matter. And if you take that approach, then you become too cold and non-expressive. Strange world. Strange. You can't win either way.
A target to aspire to. So when I wake up in the morning, year 1, when we've achieved another 10 million or so, I don't tell myself that's it, we've achieved, we're done.
Yeah.
I say to myself, there is still a way to go, there is still more to do. Okay, but now, so you're stuck between those two extents, if you want. One that says have no expectation at all and you'll be happy, and the other says have extremely high expectations and you'll be successful. What's the problem with the modern world is that we believed in this and not that.
My day won't start without my favorite Sony kit. This electric brush is really a game changer. A tap on
You know, the problem with the modern world is when you're growing up, I'm sure, I don't know your mom, but your mom told you success is more important than happiness. Go thrive in life.
Or that success leads to happiness.
Or that success leads to happiness, right? So we believe that.
Yeah.
While it's not true. I mean, how often do you meet someone who's successful and rich and famous and swimming in money and everyone's attracted to them and paparazzis are all around them and they're miserable?
But do you really, so this is an argument that gets thrown out a lot, that people have money, fame, etc., are they really happy? And I'm sure there are so many cases, someone like Robin Williams who had all these things and he did whatever he did. And but do you really know the other person? He's talking about all these famous people who have paparazzi money, etc., and they may not be happy. They may be happy. You don't know, or they may be suffering as much as you are. You really don't know. You can just look at the picture and make an educated guess. And so weird, right? So weird. And then there is this other side which says that don't compare. But if you don't compare, how do you move ahead? Because to move ahead, you have to compare. But then you compare with yourself. Strange way. No wonder, all these self-help and all these things. I think Neville Goddard or somebody who was from 60s or 70s, people are still looking at those tapes, not 70s, 80s if I'm not wrong, and people are still looking at those tapes and talking about Goddard now. Strange world. I mean, people actually, I think irrespective of what you have or don't have, there is going to be some stuff. And if you have money, some of it can really be addressed. And money, when I say obviously not crazy money, some money, good amount of money, so that your health, food, shelter, clothes, you can socialize a bit, you don't have to stress a lot about the next day. I think if you have that, good enough. Now then you have to talk about all these things. But before that, it's a strange world, because go and ask people who don't have money or who are feeling not seen.
Okay, success doesn't always lead to happiness. Now, between those two, there is a midpoint, like everything in life,
Beautifully put.
which is I need a realistic expectation. A realistic expectation is not lowered than how it should be, and it's not higher than how it should be. I need an ambitious
No wonder he's a best-selling author.
ambition that is higher than the realistic expectation, and I need a contentment that sometimes even my realistic expectation might be missed. Okay, and in that case, while I aim for a realistic expectation and a high ambition, I'm getting.
I think the video is too long, and the video of mine is already, say, 17 minutes. I think I have to stop now. But all these things that they're talking about now, all these things are mentioned in our religious books, scriptures, etc. There is this famous quote from one of the great books, which says that do your work, don't worry about the results. So something along that line, maybe, may not be. Let me know what you think about this whole happiness thing. How do you achieve it? How do you become happy, or how do you remain happy? If you have thoughts around it, let me know, and I'll be very happy to talk to you in comments. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.